Governor of Enugu State, Dr. Mbah, has charged Africa on robust and regional collaboration and trade facilitation, insisting that Africa's economic renaissance lies in extensive trade, not charity. Mbah, who insisted that Africa had all that it takes to build its own table, rather than wait to invite it to the table, also taxed the continent on fully exploiting the power of intra-Africa trade and opportunities inherent in the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. He gave the charge on Tuesday while delivering the closing remarks of the session, the Africa Opportunity, Regional Collaboration and Trade Facilitation, on the second and final day of the 2025 Commonwealth Enterprises and Investment Summit in London. At the session, which focused on how Africa could leverage the potential in its 1.3 billion population to boost trade and investment, the governor noticed that such integration and trade facilitation had never been more compelling than now in the face of harsh global and existential headwinds facing the continent. He regretted that most of the objectives, including removal of tariffs and non-tariffs barriers for which AfCFTA was established, were yet to be actualized, wondering how Africa's $40 billion annual spending on food imports can be rationalized. Nevertheless, the governor said that it is not all doom and gloom, noting that it took the European Union over 35 years to launch its single market, but charged Africa to learn from the EU by taking action, prioritizing regulatory frameworks, human capital, and infrastructure, among others. It is recalled that Mbah had, during the first day of the summit organized by the Commonwealth Enterprises and Investments Council on Monday, led the state governor's roundtable session where he marketed investment opportunities in Enugu State to global leaders and investors.
Our profound thanks to the speakers and the panelists for their incisive analysis. These analyses have lent insightful perspectives to the discourse regarding how Africa can leverage the potential it has of 1.3 billion population to boost trade and investment. Such large population, plus the fact it has a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion and has 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land, means Africa should actually be building the table and not waiting to be invited to the table. But the challenges lies in translating Africa's remarkable potential into real economic development that benefits the continent's people. The big question has always been how that can be achieved. One of the solutions lies in fully exploiting the power of trade, particularly intra-Africa trade. It would seem this was the void the African Continental Free Trade Area came to fill. The World Bank estimates that AfCFTA would lift 30 million people from extreme poverty, raise incomes for 68 million people, and boost Africa's income by 450 billion by 2035. That is just 10 years from now. Again, the need for integration and trade facilitation has never been more compelling than now, given all the existential crises we're experiencing. So the need for both Africa Union and the Commonwealth integration can never be more compelling than now. But another big question is the extent to which AfCFTA key objectives such as removal of tariffs and non-tariffs barrier have been actualized. The answer leaves much to be desired. Rhetoric has not been matched with necessary action. The result is that the economic benefits that African economies would have reaped from improved inter-trade remains a dream deferred. How can it be explained that despite the vast arable land, Africa still spends $40 billion on food imports annually? Now imagine what difference such substantial sum could have on African economies if they were generated via intra-continental trade. The dream of a continental-wide common market remains yet elusive, despite our framework's deep-rooted structural barriers. They still exist. Only 14.4% of Africa's trade is intra-African, compared to 69% in Europe and 59% in Asia. Just 7% of Africa's trade moves by air, yet we face the highest intercontinental flight cost in the world. Over 70% of goods are transported by road, but poor road infrastructure and border bottlenecks cost us over $4 billion annually in lost trade. Maritime transport is underused. Only 1 in 10 African countries has a major port efficiently connected to inland markets. Rail systems, our most cost-effective bulk trade option, remain disconnected or outdated across most of the continent. These statistics are dismal, especially given that it's nearly a decade after the signing of the ACTA. But it's not all doom and gloom. Europe's long walk to the European Union offers some inspiration, given the many barriers it faced. It took the European Union over 35 years from the Treaty of Rome in 1957 to the launch of the single market in 1993 to fully realize a space where goods, services, capital, and people could move freely. They didn't just talk integration, they backed it with laws, infrastructure, and political commitment. The Schengen Agreement, which came later, made it possible to travel across most of European countries without a passport. And the EU's common legal and regulatory framework ensures that a product approved in one country can move freely across all others without new checks or taxes. It wasn't instant, it was intentional. Africa can learn from this. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to align ours. If Europe could do it with dozens of languages, diverse economies, and a history of division, then Africa, with continental free trade area as its compass, has every reason to succeed. We cannot talk about building a common market when we're not yet connected, physically or digitally. So the question is not what's wrong, it's what must be done. First, consolidation is key. We need more than political will. We need a unified legal and regulatory framework, one that harmonizes trade rules, streamlines procedures, and builds confidence for businesses across borders. Second, invest in the key enablers. The growth engines of African trade are not abstract, and as we have just heard this afternoon, they are transport corridors, smart ports, cross-border rail, digital payment system, efficient customs, and unified standards. Africa's youthful population may be a unique demographic advantage in a world where many other continents contend with aging populations, but it could still prove to be a social tinderbox if not carefully harnessed. Nurturing Africa's human capital should thus be seen as an imperative. Human capital is every nation's true wealth. No nation ever rises above the sheer capacity of its human capital. It goes without saying that growing our human capital will necessarily entail fixing our education system. Only when we sufficiently train our youth can they be truly considered the engine of the world's future labor. This is a development imperative, and that brings me to a challenge and a call to action. Africa Continental Free Trade Area is not a feel-good creation. Neither should it be subsumed by a regional bloc. It is for all of us. Let's not allow regionalism become a barrier to Pan-African growth. Let's unite our markets, our ports, our rails, and our ambition. To global partners, Africa is not just a market. Africa is a force in fintech, agriculture, logistics, green energy, and more. While much of the world is aging, Africa is getting younger. By 2030, over 40% of the world's youth will be African. That's not just a statistic. That's a competitive advantage. So, the message deducible from the discussions this afternoon is that the African economic renaissance keenly sought lies in extensive trade. Not aid, not charity. Africa is ready. Let's turn frameworks into highways. Let's turn policies into power. Let's turn potentials into performance. The time is now, the opportunity is massive, and Africa is moving. Thank you all for listening.